With bust measurements and waist measurements, can you just whack it on the side? Well, the answer to that is it depends how much you've got to increase it by. I would say that the maximum that you can comfortably just whack on the side is about 1.5 centimetres. Anything more than that, and this bit here will start to be too small, and you'll end up with a really big armhole and extra fabric around the sides, but not enough fabric here. The best way to do it is to look at everything holistically. So I've got to add 2 centimetres here, and I've got to add 2 centimetres here, which means the whole thing can be brought out. So first up, we want to change the lengths. So we've got the cross back and the cross front lines. They're really useful if you need to change your nape to armhole depth measurement. I also need to change the nape to waist. So rather than just whacking it on the bottom here, I'm going to actually draw a line through the middle between the underarm and the waist point. The reason I do that is because if you add it just to the bottom of the waist here, the bodice actually gets narrower the further down it goes, and so you'll be making the waist smaller. So to keep the balance of everything as it is now, I draw a line, doesn't have to be exact, through roughly the middle between here and here. Repeat that on the front. And then what I'm going to do is separate my front and my back so that I can work on each of them individually, but I'm going to make sure that I keep these measurements around the edges so that I've got a complete picture of what I need to do for the front and the back. I'm going to have a look at the length. So I want to add 0.5 centimetre to my nape to underarm point. So I'm going to cut across my cross back line, and I'm going to split these two apart 0.5 centimetre. So to do that, you can leave all of this intact and just cut straight through. This is where my Power Magic tape comes in handy. So pop a strip of paper behind one of them and then tape it down. Next, you want to measure 0.5 centimetre or whatever it is you're adding. So I'm going to use a pencil for this because it's a bit more precise than using a pen. 0.5 centimetre. And then you want to continue your centre back line upwards because you're going to match the other piece to it. And then you want to stick this back down. So lining up the centre back lines and the line you've just drawn with the cut line. Take that in place. If you are shortening your torso rather than lengthening it, what I would suggest is going a little bit above the middle of the armhole, drawing the wedge that you need to take out, cutting it and then closing it over. I've added my first 0.5 to the length. So I need to add 1 centimetre from here to here. I've already added half, so I can scribble that out and put 0.5. And so what I need to do now is repeat this process here and add 0.5 centimetre to that. So I'm going to do that now. And then again, extend this line up. Draw your 0.5 centimetre line on, or whatever your measurement is. And then stick this back on, lining up the lines you've drawn with the lines on your pattern piece. Obviously, if you don't need to do any length adjustments, you can skip this bit, but it's a good thing to know how to do. Once I've done that, I give myself a nice big satisfying tick because I've done it. You can also tick it on your measurement sheet so you know you don't have to adjust it again. The reason I start with the back, with the length changes, is that whatever you've changed the back by, you're then free to change the front by too. So I've added 1/2 centimetre here, so I'm going to add 1/2 centimetre here and also 1/2 centimetre here. The importance of that is boobs happen on the front, and so with your nape to bust point, I've got to add 5 centimetres to my length, which is quite a lot. It means that my bust is lower than the block, but if I just added 5 centimetres into the front, my back would be way too long and I'd have too much fabric pooling around the bottom. So I always do the base length changes first, which is to the back because that's your structure, and then I repeat that onto the front, and then whatever's left over is what you actually need to add for the bust. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this and this on these 2 lines. You can chop off any bits that are hanging over if they're getting in your way, but leave space either side because you might need to use it to increase the side seams and things. Now, this is done. My armhole here, I've added 0.5, so actually that's 3.5 now. Same thing for this armhole. My nape to bust point is +5. I've added 0.5 here, so I've got 4.5 there. And my nape to waist front is +2. So I've added 1. So I need to add 1. So, starting from the top now, we've done the length measurements. I'm going to add onto the shoulders. So we're going to mark these 2 points. Just extend your shoulder line, or if you're making it smaller, mark it further back. Obviously, if you're making it smaller rather than bigger, just reverse what I'm doing. So I'm going to extend the shoulder line, front and back, and then mark 0.7 with my pattern master. So we can tick off both of those. If you need to add more than 2 centimetres to your bodice, you absolutely need to split the bodice halfway through and add it internally. If you've got 2 centimetres, use your discretion. You might be able to put it on here if your crossback's okay. So for example, my crossback needs 2 centimetres. My side seam needs 2 centimetres too. My neck needs 9 millimetres and so does my front. So what I can actually do is draw a line through here and add a centimetre into my neck, because my shoulder's fine, I don't need to add it there. My neck's too small, my crossback's too small, and so is my bust. So have a look at relationships between things. So here I can split that and add a centimetre into the neck. So if I draw a parallel line through here, around about midway through the neck, so I'm going to go for 4 centimetres. And keep it parallel to the centre back. This width here, as long as you're not going too far into the curve, you're all good. And then I'm going to repeat that on the front, a bit closer to the front, because I want it to hit kind of the first third of that curve, because it starts to curve round quite a lot from there. So I'm going to go for 3 on the front. I'm also going to draw an anchor point line through the middle so that I'm going to match that after I've opened it out. Same thing here. Cut up here. I'm going to add 1 centimetre in here, and I'm also going to add 1 centimetre in here. Draw that line across and then stick this back together. This one's super important because you can't rely on this anymore because the curves are different. So that's why you need an anchor line when you're doing this. Make sure it agrees and then tape it back together. Only draw your vertical line here if your neck is also too small. If your neck's fine, but your shoulder is 1 centimetre too short, for example, you can draw the line here. If your cross front and all of this is okay, what you can end up doing is draw the line here. Just make sure they're parallel to your centre front and your centre back. I'm going to repeat that process on the back now. And that's what I've added into my back and my front. So now I can go around and change the circumference measurements to reflect that I've added a bit in. So the neck is now done. It's 1 millimetre more, I don't care. I can always bring that in a little bit if I need to, or tweak it at the toile stage. If your neck circumference is a little bit big, it's not the end of the world. This is done. That's taken care of. So cross back, I've added 1 centimetre. So I want to add 1 more centimetre to that. Under bust or bust level, I've added 1. So that is now just add 1. Same thing here, it's just add 1. So I'm going to change this one too and change this one because I've added 1 centimetre through here. It's coming out and it's bigger now. So what I've done here is I've added 1 centimetre into my cross front that I didn't need. So that now potentially needs to come in 1 centimetre. I'm going to have a look when I've done everything else and see if I need to do that. So I know that I've got some extra stuff to do with regards to the bust, so I'm going to go for my back first. I find the back easier to do to start with because it doesn't involve bust shaping and things like that. So what we want to do on here extra is add 1 centimetre for the cross back. So I'm going to draw 1 centimetre in there. We need to add 1 centimetre all the way down the side seam. I can do it in pen actually. So that's done and that's done. Whatever you do to the back here, you've got to do to the front to maintain the balance. So I'm going to add 1 centimetre, just following the line I've already got, so that I know my front and my back are going to stay balanced. And then I can tick that off and tick that off. So for my back armhole, this is going to be my new location. I don't draw that in yet because I want to match it to the front to make sure that they both look good. What I need to do here is reshape that bit and reshape my back neck. So the back's done except the armhole. I'm happy with that. Moving on to the front, I can reshape my neckline and I'm going to just draw that in there, draw that in, and on my back too, just fill in that little corner bit. I've got my front shoulder point here. This potentially needs to come in, but I'm going to see what it looks like with the rest of the shaping. And so all I need to deal with on the front is my bust point length. So I know that my bust point tends to be lower. My bust point is lower than Pattern's. So what I want to do is put my bust point in the right place. Also, by adding a centimetre here, I've thrown my bust point out a centimetre. So I need to bring my bust point back in 1 centimetre and also bring it down. What I'm going to do is draw a line. So my bust point is 10 centimetres back from the centre front because there's 20 centimetres between them. So I'm going to draw my line in just for a while. This is my front bust line. I'm going to remeasure to put my bust point where I need it to be. By increasing this, I've also increased my nape to bust point, so that's why I leave this till the end. I'm not bigger than a C cup, so I know that I don't need to do a full bust adjustment. So take it to the side neck and then bring it down. So I want 39 centimetres to be my bust point level, so I need to lower my dart down to there. Hashtag low boobs. So I've put my bust point here, and then, so I know that's 39. Actually, what I can do at the same time is measure down to see what that is. So my nape to front waist is now 56, which is perfect. That's what I want it to be. So all I've got to do is reposition my bust point to here and redraw my darts to that point. So I've got my new bust point. My waist is perfect, so I keep the darts the same width that they are. So I want to keep the width of this dart, which is 6. I want to go 3 centimetres either side, and then I can draw my new dart position. I'm going to keep these where these are for simplicity, but I'm going to check my front to my back first to get the right location for the darts. I am now going to do my armhole. So I'm going to cut my side back because I've adjusted all of this. And then I'm going to take my back over to my front. So I want to make sure that they make a nice shape together. So I'm positioning this. This is the old notch for the old dart. I'm positioning those together. So that's where I want my dart to be. And then that's where I want my dart to be. And then I'm going to draw that shape in. So that makes a nice curve for the armhole. I can now draw my dart legs in. You could change the angle of the dart later, but for now, just draw it to the legs. You can sort it out in a bit. So this is all happy. It's just my armhole now that I need to fix. What I want to do is cut my front shoulder because there's no dart involved. You can also fold it back. And then I'm going to match my shoulders together. So I want to make sure that my neck makes a nice shape. And that's where my shoulder dart is. And then bring this over to the other side. So that's perfect. And that makes a nice shape there. So I potentially want to bring this in. So I want to angle that in that way. To like there. And then that can come out to give me more cross back space. This is a great shape, that's a great shape. They agree with each other. So then I need to measure my new potential armhole to make sure that I've got enough space. And you can actually use your tape measure to draw a nice curve. So I'm going to increase this round. And that gives me an armhole that's going to work. It's a centimetre less than what I measured, but I measured quite a loose armhole, so I know I can get away with that. So basically what I've done here, by increasing this, I've made the cross front too big, which means I can then afford to scoop this in. That means I get a bigger armhole. So I can now fill in this shape. That's my back done. And for my front, I just want to curve this in and reach back to the underarm point as it is. These are my blocks now ready to trace off. So I'm going to do that now. So the back's totally done. And then for the front, I've just got to true the darts. So starting with this dart, fold the line or the leg nearest the side seam. Get a really good fold. Pivot from the bust point in. So you can see here, they don't quite agree. So I'm going to curve that up a little bit to meet that old line, because that looks like a weird lump. So I'm just going to ignore that and go through. Get my tracing wheel through that shape. So then I've got my finished dart shape. For this one, I'm going to fold the bottom line and take it up to the top. Again, get a really good crease and pivot from the bust point up. Here, what I want to do is draw a straight line from the underarm point to the waist. And then tracing wheel that. And that is my finished bodice block adaptation from an existing block.